starting with empathy is co-regulation.
Yeah.
That individual is not regulated when they're upset with these thoughts that they have and their frustration. So by giving the empathy approach, you're co-regulating with them.
Yeah.
You're saying, I see, I've experienced that. I know what it feels like, and it's awful. Let's, what would help you? Talk.
Hi, I'm Staci Neustadt. I am a speech language pathologist and the CEO at Making Sense of Autism, and I'm a student of Susan.
And I'm Susan Golubock. I am a now retired occupational therapist who has worked many, many years after I discovered even my own autism with other autistic individuals. I founded Making Sense of Autism because of my passion to not only understand my brain and how it worked differently, but to try to explain what I've learned to other people so that they're more understanding and therefore more accepting and more accommodating to autistic individuals.
So, our goal is to help you provide the right support without trying to fix autism, but by understanding it. So, whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or just someone who wants to learn, you're in the right place. Be sure to subscribe and join us every week. We talk about a new topic. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Be sure to hit subscribe so you get our weekly videos we put out every week, and join our email list because we also add some little extra tidbits and freebies in there. Last week, Sue and I did a school training, and Sue used a phrase that really resonated with me, and I feel like it's so powerful. She said, "We need to take an empathy approach." You can feel that shift. It's not a behavior plan, it's not a consequence ladder, no more compliance strategies, an empathy approach. But here's the question, what does that actually mean? Because in schools, empathy often gets misunderstood because they think, is it being permissive? Is it lowering expectations? Is it letting the students get away with it, or something entirely different? Sue, share with us, what were you thinking when you shared with this school who was struggling with a student who has a trauma history? Well, what did you mean when you said use an empathy approach?
I have to admit, the more they described what the child was going through and the background that the child was dealing with, of having lost a parent and having those kinds of things, said, this child has experienced trauma. And I think everyone can relate to at some point in their life where they've lost someone very important to them. And what we all want to feel heard and understood. And so I know as an OT, when I was working, they would say, oh, autistics lack empathy. Autistics can't see things from our perspective. And then, let's turn that around and say, how often do you shift your focus to attempt to see things from an autistic perspective? Do you have empathy for those who you have struggled to understand? You may have empathy for someone who you can relate to because it relates back to something you have experienced. But if you struggle to understand autism or an autistic perspective on things, then you're going to struggle to have empathy or show empathy. But in this particular case, with this particular child, I felt that the school district, every human being can relate to the trauma that she's experienced. So I was simply asking them to do what I thought they were capable of doing, which is relate to the traumatic experience that has nothing to do with autism, but something that she, like they, have experienced. And let's empathize and consider how she must be feeling when she, because they said she's a very cooperative young child, except all of a sudden she'll lash out and hit and anger. And now I could relate to how I feel about some traumatic events. The thought comes into my head, oh, I get so angry. I just want to lash out. And it has nothing to do with what's going on. You're right. You didn't trigger it, but to recognize that's how you, which means you've got to go into yourself and say, okay, how do I feel when a traumatic event reoccurs in my thoughts? Something triggers it. And what do I want to do? What do I do with that anger, that frustration, that feeling of helplessness, not being able to do anything about what has happened to me, and not being able to communicate or express it to somebody who understands? So there's got to be that I recognize it in myself, I see it in that person, and you say, I see this happen. Could it have anything to do with what I know has happened to you?
And the statistics are crazy. 60 to 65% of students, all students, have reported trauma on the ACEs. And 70 to 90% of autistic individuals report experiencing at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. So those statistics speak volumes of why we need to lead with empathy instead of compliance and discipline. And like you said, Sue, we might need to look within ourselves first of why are we responding with compliance? Why aren't we responding with empathy? These poor kids are experiencing or have experienced trauma that they're just wanting that feeling of safety. And we've talked about that before, how the foundation to a lot of things with interacting with kids is, do they feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
And if we
And,
lead with that empathy, that makes such a huge difference.
and you remember their child and you're an adult. If they don't feel safe with an adult who should be the safety factor in their lives, because they know they don't have the power and control that you do as an adult. And if you aren't able to provide that safety net, where do they go? What do? They run out of the room. They hit at anger with, you're not providing me with, you're not a safe person. And I'm angry with you because I don't feel safe and you're not a safe person. You're not showing me you're a safe person.
Yeah. And I think a big thing that we sometimes have to look within ourselves, because oftentimes we were raised with compliance and maybe even spanking and paddles. That was a funny conversation we had in my house this weekend. Um, and so it feels like if we lead with empathy, we're giving into the behavior. And so we have to shift that mindset that we're not giving into the behavior. We can still set the boundaries, but we can lead with empathy of understanding they're frustrated, understanding they have some strong feelings. They lost a parent. They are feeling like they aren't smart enough in school. They're feeling like an outcast because they don't feel like everyone else. And leading with that empathy and just getting curious, asking why, asking what's going on. That is not going to create more of a behavior. You can
Mm-mm.
lead with that empathy and still set the boundary. I don't like it when you hit me. And then problem solve. What else could you do when you're mad? Which are steps we talk about all the time. And even thinking about those steps, empathy, boundary, problem solve, and plan. Those really are going to create a closer connection and solve the problem so the behavior doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're starting with empathy is co-regulation.
Yeah.
That individual is not regulated when they're upset with these thoughts that they have and their frustration. So by giving the empathy approach, you're co-regulating with them.
Yeah.
You're saying, I see, I've experienced that. I know what it feels like, and it's awful. Let's, what would help you? Talk about it, take a break so that you can calm your, think about it yourself. What is it you need? How can I help? And then you can get to where you can say, okay, now the next time you have this feeling, I'm a safe person to go to.
Mhm.
But if you lead with hitting me, that doesn't trigger me to want to help you.
Yeah.
It's I would prefer if you do it this way. Let me know by just being angry at yourself, but not lashing out at me. And that's a key that I can then see without getting upset because you hurt me. And it'll make it faster and easier for me to be your safe person. You see how you can remodel what behavior you do want, but only after you've co-regulated.
And it all feels so much better. I know even if I have a moment and I yell at my kids or discipline, I feel awful afterwards. But if I lead with the empathy and the boundaries and the problem solving, it feels so much better.
And it works better.
Hopefully, yes. So this is a little suggestion, but yet a big change. You could literally try today. And yes, it does take a pause and a mindset shift, but do it. And then come back and share with us how it went. Did it feel better? Did it feel worse? We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get our videos every week with little tidbits like this. And join us at Making Sense of Autism in our community to get our emails every week. We appreciate you being here and spreading the word of empathy, of understanding, so that our autistic kids feel seen and heard.
And
Thank you,
safe.
Sue. Yes, and safe. Thanks,
Thank you,
Sue.
Staci.